Welcome, everybody, to a podcast editor mastermind presented by the Podcast Editor Academy. I am Steve Stewart. We got a very special presentation for the day. Do you know what podcast editors charged in 2024? Do you know where you rank among your peers? We're about to find out and reveal those in the 2024 Podcast Editor Industry Survey results. Let me bring on my co-host with me, the Mark Deal.
Mark Deal. Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me on again.
Appreciate you being here. And Mark is the master of all things regression testing. He's the one who crunches the numbers, puts the slides together. This is going to be what people look for this every single year.
I turn Excel into PowerPoint. Really. I'm like a corporate jockey.
Yep. And we have a very special co-host, one of the original Yetis right here, the Carrie Caulfield.
Hello, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be here with Steve and Mark.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's
Carrie.
so cool to have you back, Carrie. Back. I mean, this really it was your show, 100 episodes of season 1, Podcast Editors Mastermind, and she's back now to help us with this survey reveal. So tell people here who haven't heard from you in a little while, because it's been a minute. What's going on with Carrie Caulfield?
Well, so I took some time off to take care of some personal stuff going on in my life. And now I am getting back into the podcast editing thing. I am also producing a podcast called Just One Person that'll be out at the end of this month. Psychedelic Frequency, which I worked on last year, won a Bronze Signal Award in Health and Wellness. So yeah, I said if that show didn't win an award, I was going to quit.
That's some heavy weight on that thing.
Yeah. So the universe is like, no.
Yeah. And is this still the best place to find Carrie, at carrie.land?
I hope so. I'm having some trouble with the redirect since Google migrated to Squarespace.
Long story.
So that's been fun. We're not going to go into that today.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to thank all the people who are here. Heidi says, let's get this show started.
Hi. Oh,
We got Leon. I think I had a conversation with Leon over email earlier today. Good to see you there. Alejandro, he's checking out. He's going to take notes now and see what it is he's going to have to edit out later. Dave Jackson, Dave Jackson, now from Podpage and the School of Podcasting, of course. Of course, Alejandro's great. He's happy to see you. So is Heidi. So we're excited to be bringing everybody the results from our 2024 survey. Mark, do you want to bring up the screen and we'll just go ahead and get into it?
We can do that, Steve. There we go.
Yay.
This is the 2024 Podcast Editor Survey results. This is the 6th year in a row that we have done this. Steve has seen a couple of key metrics yesterday. Carrie hasn't seen anything yet. So she's reacting as you, the live viewers, are also reacting to that.
Yeah, I'm reacting with you guys.
I noticed, like, at the moment I put that up there, she put herself on mute, which is probably a good thing. Now, hopefully no surprises, but always lots of insight. That being said, I like go into methodologies a little bit. I did not do regression testing this year, much like I did not last year. I just did like some pivot table averages and things like that. Again, the whole point of the Podcast Editor Survey is obviously to ask people, hey, how much are you charging? How long are you taking to do things? Also finding a little bit about your experience and work scope and what you use. And from that, we're not really judging people. I hope none of this comes off as a judgment to anyone who's done the survey or as anyone who's watching the survey. But think of it as insight. I'm going to look at it quantitatively, and I'm going to ask some qualitative questions that I may not have the answer to. Maybe Steve does, maybe Carrie does, maybe you, the viewer, does. But we're going to use this quantitative analysis to look at what each of us are doing and think, how can we each do better? And by better, I mean, charge more money and do it in less time. And hopefully that's the goal. Does that sound good to you, Steve? To you, Carrie?
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Oh, here we go.
We should also mention to everybody that this is obviously will be a replay. So this is going to be out there if you happen to be, people who are hopefully watching this are going to stick around. But we will have the slides available, and we're going to make them available through our newsletter. And we'll give you a link to how to download the slides yourself in a little bit.
Very good point. And for those listening for the first time on the Podcast Editor Mastermind, there's been reactions to these surveys, but we've never revealed it directly on the podcast as well. And since this is going out to Podcast Editor Mastermind, we're going to try to talk about what's on the screen for those of you hearing this for the first time with your ear holes and not your eye holes. Hopefully we'll be pretty descriptive about that. That being said, Steve is going to read out the links. And again, all this information we have is freely available. The editor survey results aren't something that we charge for. It's something that the industry provides to us, and so we provide to the industry. It's a good point, Steve. I wanted to add and clarify that a little bit more. Oh, the clapping, the applause. All right. The big one. How much are people charging? How much time are they spending? And doing some very complicated math, i.e. division, what is their average hourly rate?
I love this slide. This is a favorite slide. I think everybody's favorite slide. We just come out of the gate running with this thing.
Yeah, you just hit us early.
Look at that purple line.
Yeah.
Hit you early, and exactly. This is all the responses. The average of how much everyone is charging for what Steve proposed as a standard scope. And I realize as the years go on, we've been doing this 6 years in a row, the scope may not be as standard because a lot of people are offering more. But again, we say, hey, if you were just to do this, what would you charge? And it looks like people charge about $200 for a 60-minute recording, basic noise reduction or leveling, mixing down to MP3. Maybe they're doing a little bit of Amaraz, definitely not some heavy dialogue editing. And how long does it take them? And this year, it's a little shorter, about 170 minutes, so about 2.5 hours for a 1 hour recording. Not bad. And the average hourly rate is now $75 per hour. Now, that isn't taking, and I say this every year, but I like to be complete on it. That is everyone's individual hourly rate. That's not taking the average price and divided by the average time, or however those fractions work out. This is actually looking at each individual person's average hourly rate and then averaging that up. One thing I do want to point out is the number of responses that we received this year was pretty low. This is about, I'd say, 0.1% of the Podcast Editors Club. So this is a pretty small sample size. So that being said, it's does introduce some variability year over year, and we'll talk about that as that comes up, as well as it may not be representative of everyone within the podcast industry. And also, since we've been doing this for 6 years in a row, there may be some survivor bias in here. That being said, I really don't think so. But there we go. That's every.
So, what would survivor bias be? Like, define that for us.
Survivor bias would be imagine someone who's been podcast editing for like 2 or 3 years, but they're no longer editing this year because they didn't get enough clients, or they're not charging enough, or essentially they went out of business. So we don't see really the decline in their rates. This is really those that survive that are still editing. Now we'll say, and Steve and I see this in Podcast Editor Academy, there's also people on the opposite end, people that we'll say grow out of podcast editing because I see as a stepping stone within the podcast editing industry, where they become bigger podcast coaches, or audio brand managers, or podcast directors of small to medium to large size firms, where they're doing more than just the editing and production. So people also exit out the other way. And sometimes those rates go up and up and up until they disappear. So it's my hope, my belief, that some of those offset each other. But that's what I mean by survivor bias. Those that aren't around this year because maybe they're no longer doing this, obviously their rates don't show up.
And I had some conversations with people over the past couple of weeks, just incidental happenstance. One didn't think they should fill out the survey because they live in a country where the cost of living is lower. Another one said that his rates had went down and he didn't want to, I guess it was kind of a realization that his rates are going down. And then another person's like, is this just for people in the United States? And this is absolutely for everybody. This is not going to be just the only requirement we have is you have to charge money to edit podcasts. That's the only requirement. Everything else, we want to get a survey sample from everybody. So if we do this again next year, we're encouraging everybody to come back and fill it out. Just give your numbers. Everything's being held here anonymously. That nobody's private information is getting out. I'm not going to be calling you saying, hey, how could you be charging $1,000 when I only make $100? Nothing like that's happening.
Yeah, and I even though I do lots of other things in podcasting now, like I'm doing producing and dialogue editing and consultations, all those things, I still fill this out because I'm still editing, and I still want to know and have available to me and to others the industry rates.
Yeah,
So
and we
it's
appreciate that because that's what we're looking for is if even if you're in a let's say you're a podcast manager and only 10% of your role is editing audio, what would you charge for this sample that we're talking about, the 60-minute noise reduction, basic volume leveling, cutting out the armoras? What would you charge just for that? You might be making $1,000 an episode, but maybe 200 of that is the editing that you would charge someone if you were only to do a la carte. So that's why I love this survey. It kind of lets everybody participate, and it gets to that fact that, okay, this is what they would be charging if they were, quote unquote, just an editor like me.
Right. But also to that point, this is a self-reporting. So we ask you a few questions and you interpret what we mean by those questions and give those responses. So you may be doing, $1,000 or more per episode because there's a lot of other things that you add, something that you couldn't really see yourself stripping out because that's the level that you offer. You don't offer basic audio editing production. So the rate that you put in there, you feel like it's reflective of your reality. And we'll try to show a little bit of some of those influences in here. Now, again, we don't go into the regressions like we did in the years past, but we've got a good litmus test, an indicator of which rates are going up or down and what's impacting them.
Yeah, I think it's all here in the slides. I
Yep.
did get to,
Yep.
to scroll through them real briefly. And
There we go.
So as we're moving on to the next slide, I'm really encouraged to see that hourly rate is still increasing. And it's interesting too, because Mark and I were talking yesterday about our presentation we'll be doing at at PodFest in Orlando in January. And we're going to be using this information in that presentation and bring out even more than what we might be giving out here in the survey reveal today.
Yep. Oh, definitely, because there's other data sources that we have access to for that one. But yep. So let's move forward. Everyone likes to know what everyone else is doing and how long they've been doing it. So this is a common 4-blocker screen that we've been doing for many years for the podcast editor survey. What is the main DAW that you're using? And it turns out more and more people, myself included, are using more than one DAW. So we ask, what is the main one that you're using? And it looks like the top players are losing market share to the DAWs that are upcoming. For example, I remember when we had like one person out of like 120, 130 used a script. Now that's almost 10% of the population that used a script as their main DAW. And there's 11 other DAWs that have kind of slid over into the bottom 15%, about 11 that make up, that's about 14%.
Yeah, Descript was 7th place last year. And you can see it's moving upwards. And since the survey was asking about audio, I mean, maybe they're editing video along with the audio in Descript, but I mean, this is focused on audio. That's why all these DAWs are primarily audio DAWs. Well, digital audio workstation audio.
Agreed. And also we like to show the cumulative experience editing versus how long you've been getting paid to edit. And as you expect, we have more people moving over into the bigger buckets. So the 5 to 10 years is about equal to the 3 to 5 years. And of course, when we started this survey about 6 years ago, a lot of people were up and coming and around the 1 to 3 year mark. So it still looks like people tend to edit themselves for a couple years before getting into professional podcast editing. And it looks like a majority of the population are starting to continue to gain experience with the average number of years.
The people listening, that 5 to 10 year bar graph is higher than it was last year by a good margin, which is very interesting to see.
And in fact, those of you, if you want to, you can compare last year's results to this year or previous years. These the 4-blocker is essentially the same format, so you can kind of flip through back and forth if you really care about that. And again, I'll get into more. Do you really care about that later? And what is
So I have a question. The main DAW, what was it last year?
Oh,
it was
for the past
still
few years?
Adobe Audition, I believe, but
Really?
I
Always.
think they've been losing market share. Agreed.
Yeah.
I think they've been losing market share.
In the past, it was easily double the second place, but now you can see in the graph here, for those listening, it's only about a third higher than Pro Tools, which I'm surprised Pro Tools made it to second place. I thought it was losing market share because we're talking to indie podcast editors, and most people who are using Pro Tools, at least from what I've heard from people, is they're coming from a radio or a studio background, and that's where they learned it, so they're sticking with it. I haven't seen a big push to learn Pro Tools, at least in podcasting or podcast post-production. But look at that. Audacity's third again. Yay!
Yeah, a solid choice. Solid. And Reaper
Yep.
isn't
Reaper.
far behind, so that's...
And Hindenburg's still up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, although Hindenburg has also lost some market share, obviously the free option of Audacity or the single payment of Reaper, I still think is attractive to a lot of people, where Hindenburg has changed their business model somewhat drastically with Hindenburg 2.0. And it looks like, based off these survey results, they're losing some market share. Now, I know that we have another pool of data, Steve, you and I, with the Podcast Editor Club. We ask people what's their main DAW. I mean, that's like one of the 2 questions that we ask. So we have like thousands of data points there, and we can kind of see where things are going. But this is with regard to just this survey alone.
Yeah, if you want to talk about that, I mean, more than half the people joining the Podcast Editor Club Facebook group are now editing with a video tool. So that shows where the industry's headed too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And perhaps where this survey is heading as well. A little bit of foreshadowing after
But audio
6
forward.
years.
We are audio forward.
Yes.
Audio forward. I like that.
And before Mark goes into the other pieces of this slide, I want to let everybody know, if you've got questions in the chat, throw them in the chat. Please do. We want to incorporate you into this whole live stream. Here's a comment from the Brian Ensminger. You can still buy a perpetual Hindenburg license, but the marketing is focused on subscription, as most things are these days.
Good to know, Brian. And Brian is the Hindenburg expert, non-biased as well, because he'll come out and say when he thinks Hindenburg could do some things better, and his community is better for that. So I appreciate you serving there, Brian. And I appreciate you joining us now, as well as letting us know that you can still buy that perpetual license.
Yep. We weren't sure he was going to make it. He's an original Yeti, but he wasn't able to make it to the live stream with us.
Yeah, he has a day job.
So number of extra services, we ask people, hey, what are the services that you are offering? And then I add all those up and see how many people are offering extra services and how many they are offering. So in addition to just some basic podcast editing, most editors are offering about, well, I'd say the mode is about four services. Now there's some that offer more. Oh, thank you for that, Steve.
Yeah, I can't see.
Steve's just made the slides bigger.
Yeah,
obviously,
it's 10-point font. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
We're getting older here.
Yeah, and this is something, as we use some of this data, not as deep as this, some of this for a talk next month on a stage. We'll really have to work some of this stuff, but yeah. And then over there, the last chart on the one page 4 blocker that we have are the extra services offered, and it looks like the leader is video shorts, audiograms, etc., followed closely by show note writing, and then video editing is now number 3, followed closely by coaching and consulting, and then it goes down from there.
Yep. It's
So how
interesting.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, well, how does that compare to last year? Like, what were the top 3 last year? Do you know offhand?
Yes, audiograms, sound bites, and video shorts was first.
Okay.
Coaching and consulting was second, and then show notes writing was third.
I'm hoping the drop in coaching and consulting is because podcasters are now better educated.
We've done our jobs.
Right? That's the goal.
You would, you would hope so. And again, this is the amount of people that are offering that service based off the survey results, but not so much how they are charging. And the next slide, I think, will shine some light on that as far as those that are offering video shorts and audiograms, etc. Are they charging more than those that do not? So thank you, Carrie, for that foreshadowing. Let's dive into that. And again, Carrie hasn't seen any of these.
No. And honestly, I have been away from this for a couple of years, so that's why I have all these questions.
Understandable. Well, these sound like natural questions, and I'm glad that we had the slides to answer them. So here they are, racked and stacked by the number of services that are being offered. So again, video shorts, audiograms, etc., are on top because the majority of editors are offering that. And then the light green bar on the top is their average rate without the service, those that aren't offering it. And the bottom dark green one is the rate with the service. So video shorts, audiograms, etc., they're charging more, those that offer that services. In fact, those top 4 services there, actually the top 6 really, but definitely those that have lots of survey data behind it, they're charging more for that money, or more for those services that they offer. Even if it wasn't part of the scope, they say, hey, I offer this. Also, it turns out their rates are more. Right. One of the things that I notice is podcast media host management has gone up significantly from last year. Those that are offering,
I know why.
Oh, you know why? Oh,
Why?
I would love to
Why?
hear why, Steve, because I wonder why myself.
Well, there's a couple media hosts out there who've gotten a little complicated, and it's because of the great offering such as dynamic insertion. I do a lot more work inside of my clients' media host because of that itself right there. And it does take more of a knowledge-based skill. You're more of an expert if you're able to upload and schedule out campaigns for somebody in their media host than you're just editing audio and returning them in MP3.
And not only an expert, I mean, imagine the value that you're offering as a podcast editor, producer, manager, whatever your title is for your clients or companies that you work with. Now, if you have the ability to dynamically manage their ads across wherever anybody is listening, anywhere in the world, anywhere across the current episode or backlog, that's huge value over, hey, just stick in whatever static ad that we had, and which is how work was done a few years ago. So no, thank you, Steve. That makes sense why they're charging more.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. But, and it's a good skill to have to know where to put the ad, by the way, if you're, if it's not like for the host company specifically, know where to put an ad in a mid-roll. Know where to put a mid-roll is very important. Timing is everything, guys. Yeah. I've heard some pretty weird ads in a very wrong place lately. So, and I just shout out to Patrick. Hello,
hey Patrick. Okay. Oh, is he here? Oh, I didn't see it. Sorry.
He is. It wouldn't be a podcast editor mastermind show without Patrick.
Yeah. Now I feel like it feels right. Right.
Right. Exactly. Carrie's here. Patrick's here. Brian's here. Yeah.
Everything's going to be okay. Right. Yeah.
And Alejandro says, recently I've been doing some research and a lot of people are looking at reel creation, REEL creation, in order to attract the audience. So we're talking about reels like video, shorts and stuff. It evolution for us. Is it, I'm sorry, I can't read this right.
Yeah.
Is it evolution for us podcast editors? Maybe. I will say this, and this is firsthand experience. So, for example, when I offer what I consider content assets for social media managers, people that do reels and things like that, having the ability to have the podcast and the video, maybe the audio only if you're just doing audiograms, but to have an hour-long session of the host, the expert, or maybe the guest, what have you, and then to be able to cut that up and then to give that over to the social media managers. Not only do you demonstrate your value more as a podcast editor, producer, manager, whatever you want to call yourself, but you also become indispensable to their bigger overall marketing team, the people that are always looking for content to promote on social media. So yeah, I can see why they also charge a little bit more. And it turns out when budget reviews come up, and again, I know this firsthand, when budget reviews come up year after year, they're like, well, we can't get rid of this person because they also feed, the notes for the show note writing to the blog people, the assets to the social media people. So you make yourself indispensable and hopefully charge more.
Yeah. And more people are asking for that kind of work as well. So,
which could be a double-edged sword. Because now they're asking you to do more work, and they might not want to pay extra for all the a la carte things you're adding on top.
They're going to pay extra. They're going to pay extra, guys. They're always going to pay extra for that.
Yes. Yeah, if there's a value, charge for it. If there's no value, if they say something like, it'd be nice to have, you say, I'm not going to work on that. That's what I call cost of curiosity in the data science realm. Is like people want to ask me, hey, what are the results of this? I ask, well, if I give you perfect information, what would you do with it? And they say, it'd just be nice to know. Like, yeah, I'm not doing that. That's just cost of curiosity. Okay, here we go. All
Can I-
the
wait.
other different.
Can I
Yes.
jump in one more thing? So I
Sure.
just want to summarize this slide, the stuff at the top. What the benefit of what you're hearing and seeing right now is finding out the people who are charging more for their audio editing services are doing these things at the top of the list. And because of that expertise, they're more valuable in the marketplace. So if you're looking to raise your rates and you're looking to expand your offerings past just audio editing, those are the things you might want to consider focusing on because you are more valuable in the marketplace.
Very good point, Steve. As well as I would take it one step further and ask yourself, why would my clients be willing to pay more for this service? What is it that they do with it? What's the value that they get out of that? And that way you turn that into your own sales copy, whether it's on your website or your price sheets, what have you. So and I think without a lot of creative stretches, you can look at each one of those and answer why that is beneficial for the client. And then that reasoning why it's beneficial for them, that's what you turn into your copy. So maybe you say, hey, I only do projects where I include these 4 services because it's valuable. This does this does that. And then you'll attract the people that will want all those things. And of course, pay the higher price.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make a shocking, I'm gonna make a shocking confession. I'm now doing video, so that's how valuable it is, right? And that's why I use the term audio forward, which is a Tom Webster term. I don't think in the future. I think next year we're gonna be talking more and more about video. So just throwing that out there, guys.
Agreed. And you mentioned Tom Webster. He's my personal crush. Hi, Tom, if you're watching this. Obviously I try to think of what would Tom do when he has this data and what are the questions that he would ask. But he brought up with some of his survey data a couple years ago that I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago that over half the people are discovering new podcasts through YouTube. And of course, YouTube is a video platform, so it just kind of makes sense to be a video first. But again, I've got a big crush on Tom, and I like his audio forward way of thinking, as well as some of the other theories he's added on top of that, like, hey, don't try to force fit things. But yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Carrie.
That's what I'm here for.
And now my admiration for Tom is public for everyone out there to see and hear.
So you could buy one confession, get another one free, right?
Yeah. And so there you go. Obviously, you have access to the slides. We will they'll be linking these into the slides in the podcast player of choice if you're listening to this, or a link down below, or have you if you're watching this video. Or you can go to full screen, what have you. One thing I want to point out, audio or artwork, the show or episode level thumbnails, those that are offering that, and it looks like it's about over 40%, those that offer that, or said that they offer that, are charging less than those that don't, which is interesting because I did not fill out this survey. I purposely have not filled out the survey year over year because I think that would be a little bit introduce some bias, but that's also one area I've stayed away from in the last 5-6 years. Is I would tell those graphic design nice people, with their Canva and closer proximity to the clients, do the episode level artwork, and it's worked out for me, and it looks like it's the same for others. So maybe if you're doing that, consider, what if I were to drop that and add a service above it that you're not currently offering? And one last thing I want to point out, it does look like that podcast editors that offer website design are charging way more than those that don't. But again, this is a very small population, less than 10%. So I think it's because they have that expertise in web design. Maybe they were web designers first before podcast editors. So that's why we've kind of set up to where it's kind of fading away. So although it looks like they're making a lot more money, it's less than 10% of the population. If you've got that skill set and that's what you want to do, great. I personally am somewhat of a website designer, more of a developer than a designer. That having been said, I stay away from those services with my podcast production and editing clients. In fact, I refer that work out because I don't want to be seen as a jack of all trades. I want to be seen as an audio forward expert, to use Tom's term, and then my own. All right, one last thing, and this is a new. This is the first time that we have offered this view. This is the change to average rate by extra services offered. So we don't look at the surveyed population. We just look at the difference between those that are charging it, that are offering it, versus those that don't. And there you see website design is at the top, but again, that's less than 10% of the population. But podcast media host management is huge, much bigger swing than last year. And I think Steve's insight about the expertise in audio or in the ad insertion and my thoughts on the value to the clients is probably why. So I thought this might be a little better view for people that want to look at what extra services they can offer by just looking at the differences in the average rates. Something we probably should have offered every year, this view. Maybe we'll go back in time and do it.
Yeah, I'm just kind of taking it in. The live recording, I think, is an interesting piece as well. I mean, I personally love to be on recordings with my clients, making sure they're not messing things up. But Alejandro has a question, and then Dave Jackson had maybe took some umbrage with the video comment I made.
Sorry, I don't know which one you're talking about. So Dave's-
yeah. Dave said, I've got 7 total plays on Spotify, so not so fast for the video being important. The episodes have been there close to a year. Dave, that's not maybe an editor problem.
Oh, come on now.
Wow.
I'm sorry. It could be
This
a
is
platform
Hall of Famer
problem.
David Jackson.
Yeah,
here.
I know. I know. I love you, Dave. I do. But I'm going to disagree with you on video because that's all my clients or all the people I'm talking to about jobs are asking for is video editing. So, and that's who's hiring. Like, there's so many ads even in kind of the professional world for video and audio. So,
and I would guess that a lot of these people who are doing the live recordings, they're going to be getting video because all these platforms record video. In fact, we're looking at Patrick here says, I am now on with all 3 of my podcasts and producing behind the scenes. He didn't say if he's editing video or if he's just there to capture the video or if they're just using the audio from the recording that has video as well. That's all interesting.
It sounds like he's live recording. I am now on with all 3 of my podcasts. And it's funny because I first introduced myself to people as a podcast director, not a producer and editor, but a director. And they're like, who is that? It's like, well, I get on, I facilitate the recording. I tell the host, the co-host, the guest, if it sounds right, if something doesn't sound right to me, either audio wise or just they're going off the rails, and I'll stop the conversation and try to get people back on track and go again. So that's something I've offered pretty early on, which is kind of live recording studio or remote. I call it podcast directing.
I like that. I like that term. That's because
it's fun because I will sometimes, and if you're a client, hi, now you know what's happening. Sometimes they'll hear when I say something and I'm telling one or a few or all of them what needs to change or maybe go off the rails, or here's an idea or concept or a question that's lingering out there in my mind as a listener that hasn't been answered. And there's other times that I'll be muted. They can't hear me, but my editor can. And I'll tell the editor what to do with a certain remark or a certain cut point. So it does, and it makes editing faster because then I can just kind of look at my track before going into the deep editing. Helps with dialogue stuff, especially on complicated topics.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, and sorry, I it's bear season, Dave. I don't know what to tell you. These just don't poke the bear. I'll stick to the slide. Love you too.
Well, who doesn't love Dave Jackson?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm in my villain era, Dave, so watch out.
It's the low lighting.
Yeah. It's mysterious.
All
All
right,
right, I
let's
think it's
move
time
on.
for the next slide because the next one gives me some insight and some interesting things too. A little bit more about the business side of it, which I love.
I totally forgot what slide that is, but
Oh, you changed.
Okay.
Ooh, look
So
at
this
those
is
arrows.
oh yeah, these arrows basically show the changes from last year to this year. So I actually anticipated Carrie's question of like how's this compared to last year, and these services have changed a lot. So podcast media host management has gone up a lot, live recording, studio, story editing design, and guest interview bookings have gone down a little bit. Guest interview bookings gone down a lot. There used to be a big swing, and then the artwork has gone down quite a bit. So, yep, moving forward. So that's
Now
a
it's
change
time
from-
for the slide I'm talking about, right?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, this one?
I like this one.
Oh.
All right, take it away, Steve. What does this mean to you?
Well, okay, so we surveyed people and asked them, okay, so are you editing for 1, 2, 10, how more? How many clients do you have? That gives us a sense for how much activity people are doing. And then the time spent editing and developing your business. So how much time, because like I'm working 40 plus hours a week, but it's not all in my DAW. I'm doing businessy stuff. I'm sending invoices. I'm following up on emails. I'm uploading and managing media host stuff, right? So that's why I like this slide. It's telling us the hours of a week that you're spent editing. That's a big line there in the first one, the 0 to 10 hours a week. Seems a lot of people doing less than 20 hours a week. I thought it'd be more. But then again, maybe these people are only doing it part-time. These could be part-time people.
So it looks like, if we're reading that, 4 out of 5 editors spend little or no time developing their business. So 20%, 1 out of 5 are spending more than 10 hours a week developing their business.
Wait, tell me the blue line versus the light blue line in the
The
slide.
light blue line, oh, forgive me, the legend's not on there. It should have been. That's
Editing
my
should
bad.
be the
Sorry.
dark blue and developing should be the light blue.
Correct. That's the way it's always been, and that's the way it was here. The
Yeah.
legends didn't come through. We'll fix that. So if you grab the slides, that'll be on there. But yeah, the light blue is developing the business. So you see, obviously, people that want to spend their time editing, vice developing their business, or at least the way. If it's a traditional service-based business. Now, obviously, if you're building a team and growing a team and managing that team, you probably think of it as developing vice you editing. But like a single practitioner, a solo editor, probably want to spend more time editing. And it looks like it's pretty evenly split between editing 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, or 30 plus. Obviously, everyone wants to be in the 30 plus bracket, and that's a little smaller, but it's pretty somewhat evenly matched. You can see the distribution there. But the light blue is those that spend time developing their business, and 80% or 4 out of 5 editors are spending little to no time developing their business.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why Steve and I developed the Podcast Editor Academy, because we want to take some of that guesswork of developing the business out for you.
Yep.
So that little
So-
plug for us.
How did that compare to last year? Do you have?
It's pretty similar.
Okay.
It's very similar, in fact. I'm looking at, I've got the slides for last year over to my left, and
Oh,
they're
good.
very similar.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah,
Number
in
of
fact-
active clients is a little different, but it's still pretty much, spread out across the different numbers.
So do you think the people spending 80% of their time developing the business, if I'm reading that right, because there's no legend, but I forgive you.
It's 80% of the people who responded said they're spending less than 10 hours.
Yeah,
developing.
0
Oh,
to
they're
10
spending
hours a
less
week.
than 10 hours. Okay. All right. Okay, that makes more sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
All
If it were
right.
switched, if you were to say, well, if you go to 10 to 20 hours developing the business, then how much time is spent actually working
Okay.
in the business? And that's why you'd be looking at the bar graphs to the right. If they're really tall, you'd say, okay, things are a little bit, well, it depends on what it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, this says that people are basically putting their heads down and working, whether
Yeah.
they have 0 to 10 hours a week or 30 plus hours a week. Maybe podcast editing is their side hustle, vice their main gig, and they don't have time to develop their business, even if they only have about 8 to 10 hours of podcast editing a week. And remember, the average is about 2.5 hours for every hour, so they're looking at 4 hours of produced audio. If you want to look at some of the other stuff in the background there.
Yeah, so a tall light blue line isn't necessarily bad. It's just indicating that there's people who they're not spending 10 hours or more a week developing their business, working on their. Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But of course, if you're working on
No,
your
it could be
business,
great. Maybe they've got their stuff on point, and that's the time that they spend. Maybe they don't consider some of the extra stuff that they do. Some people consider spending time on social media developing their business. Some people don't. And that's some of the questions that we asked in the past that we didn't necessarily ask this year.
Okay.
And then another graph, obviously, is the number of active clients. So we show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we've got the 6 to 10 bucket and the 10 plus bucket, which ironically, Steve, this kind of matches up with our the roadmap inside the Academy. When people join, we ask how many clients do you have to get people to the next level and then move on to the next level. So that way all the courses and scripts and everything, we kind of set that out as a roadmap for people. This is one of the reasons that we did it. So we could see where people were at. It looks like more editors, and Steve, you've got last year's slides in front of you, but more editors have more than just one client now, correct?
yeah, actually those two bars have almost swapped between 1 and 2, where there's fewer people with only one client who've filled out the survey, and there's more people with 2 clients, obviously, or more than that.
Yeah.
That's going on.
And so basically this is to look at, say, ask yourself, hey, where am I at? And how much more room is there to go based off of the editor survey, or those that answered the editor survey. So if you've got more than 10 clients, hey, congrats, you're in the top, 16, 15% of those surveyed as far as the number of clients. And hopefully you're making more than the average, hopefully considerably more than the average. And if not, hopefully the insight that we're giving you on this survey is helpful. And now I think this next one is probably my favorite slide.
I was just going to say, Mark's favorite. Here we are, the plot graph.
This is me. Yeah, this is definitely my favorite. So this is every data point that we received. We look at the total price that they're charging versus the total time that they spend on that job, and all the individual points. So if you filled out the survey, you could probably find your data point on here. And are you in the green area or the orange area? And of course, you want to be as far to the upper left as possible. Like I think our leader here is charging $1,000 and spending 4 hours to edit that hour worth of work. They also offer live recording, whether it's studio or remote. They also do music and sound design, and they also offer podcast media host management. And that's just for that one data point. So again, I like to illustrate the differences of some of these. Now, those that are off into the far right, I think there could be some country, country influences there. Basically, non-U.S. workers that have answered a survey. They're spending a lot of time to do the work and not charging as much as some others. So some of those outliers there. If that's you, it's it may be understandable if that's the common rate in the country that you work in.
So, I know you have the plot with the live recording, music, and sound design. Is there, so basically this is kind of a summation of that bar graph with the extra services, perhaps?
Somewhat, but this is specific to that data point. Like the other one was the averages. So I looked at the average of everyone that offers a service versus the average of everyone that does not. I didn't look at other influences and factors, i.e. like the regression analysis where I tried to take out or normalize, is this person educated? Are they, using a certain doll and all those other factors? It's just the averages. But here in this plot, I actually get to put all the survey data onto one view, and then I draw that line, which is that's $75 an hour is that line. And then you can see where people are at with regard to that line. And then the ones that are pretty high, I go into that specific data point. I'm like, oh, what is it that they're doing? I mean, there may have been other things, like maybe they have, 20 clients or other things. But I just looked at the services.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. I like the one that's right in the center. Can I just say that?
Okay. All right.
That has nothing to do with anything, but
Yeah.
I think that's just.
I think I might
nice.
know what you're. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, Steve. Any? Again, this is one of my favorites, and I don't think last year I illustrated like a data point and some of the things they're doing. I know I've done it in some years past, but I kind of missed that, so I offered that. There's a couple of other data points on there. I wanted to see what it is that they're doing.
Yeah, it's an interesting chart, though I like the other slides a little better. But it is cool to see where I am on here and where all the other people are who are above the orange slant, and it's like, okay, but I could be doing better. And I think that's part of the reason why we do the surveys. It encourages people to charge more because our services are valuable.
Yeah, you can also see some of the groupings, like people that, there's a whole bunch of editors on that 2-hour line, a whole bunch of editors on the 3-hour line, a whole bunch of editors on the 4-hour line, and then, some other scatter stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely on that 3-hour line.
And again, one thing I do want to point out is clients don't necessarily see the number of hours that you put into it. Again, they are measuring the value that they get out of it. So as far as these clients, they're just looking at the left-hand bar. So there's one client paying $1,000 an episode. There's a couple clients paying around $750, a client paying $600, like 3 paying about $500. So they're looking not so much at what the editor's putting into it, but the value that they are getting out of it. And again, that's a constant question that I challenge every editor listening to this podcast, watching this live stream, watching this replay. Ask yourself, what is the value that I'm providing for my clients? And then how do I make that clear that they're receiving that value?
Yeah, that's the trick. That's I'm in a unique position because I feel like I'm starting all over again. So I'm having to get back in touch with all of that. And it's been a really interesting experience to do. And I know that if you ask those questions, what value do you deliver, and you can communicate them to your clients, like I know where it can take you. But I know it's not easy to be starting out and having to ask those questions.
It's not, especially like reinventing yourself if you're in the middle of it. If your head's down and like I've got 2 clients, 3 clients, but I want to get 10 clients and I want all my clients paying me double what they're doing now, it's tough. And that's where the time and business development comes in. And we hope, watching the survey and looking at the survey results, you consider that business development time, and then you use that and some of the insights in here to say, hey, how can I change or make my pricing sheet a little bit more clear on the value they're getting, or my sales page a little bit more clear on the value of working with me. It's not so much, hey, I spend 6 hours vice an hour. I don't lean on AI tools, or maybe I do lean on AI tools.
Hey, there's
they
nothing
don't
wrong
care.
with AI. Nothing wrong with AI.
Oh, nothing wrong with AI at all.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we've mentioned in years past, and now this has become a common thing, those that know how to use AI effectively will have an advantage over those that don't. But again, we should be seen as the masters of podcasts, of audio editing, and perhaps video editing production. And if we have to use AI, or we do use AI to help us out, so be it. But we're coming at from the end result,
Yeah.
not so much what AI can do for us. Of course, the AI models and all those things, they're going to develop their sales page that's so generic around AI, it won't be specific enough to, for audio editing production.
Well, you
That
have to
being
know how
said-
to train the AI, and that is
True.
a skill you can sell to your potential clients as well.
True.
So-
And I remember there was another large conference I was at less than a year ago, and there were no less than 3 AI companies that I got to talk to the founders that was relatively new. So there's those that are coming from that aspect that are very AI minded, and then they're bringing what they know and what they can do to the podcasting space.
Got to bring up the comments. Heidi Stabbert says, I so need to raise my rates.
I do too. Yeah, it's that time of year, honestly. Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Here's
Yep.
my rate increase.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we have Leon commenting, awesome data. Are they including the time it takes to do the extra services within this time frame? No, they shouldn't.
They shouldn't. Now, again, it's a self-reporting. So if they think, hey, when I do a job, this is what I charge and the time I spend into it. But that being said, then, they're also, the way we do it, we're measuring by the rate, so we take the price you charge and the time you spend in it. And if you're spending 5 hours to do an album artwork and not really charging for that, it's going to impact your average hourly rate, which may be what we've seen there. So it's a great question. And again, a lot of the time, this data really doesn't give us perfect answers, but hopefully it gives us better questions to ask ourselves to develop our own podcast editing business.
Yeah. If I could point out, when you're taking the survey, the first thing you're entering is obviously your email, just so we can make sure we don't get duplications. But then it asks you, it says, here's the scenario. 60 minutes, audio, noise reduction, the basic. What do you charge for this? You can't get to the next page that says, what other services do you provide? How many clients? You don't get to see any of that till you get to the second page. So your initial question that you're answering is only about our scenario, only about the editing. If you're throwing any other numbers in there, we didn't ask for that. So it should be pretty close to accurate for what they're responding with. You're getting 60 minutes of audio from your client. They want an audio podcast. What do you charge? And then all the other stuff comes after that, which then gives us more insight, which you can see is what Mark is putting together for us in the slides, which you can get, by the way, by being on our newsletter. So go to podcasteditoracademy.com/newsletter. If you're already on there, I'll be sending an email out tomorrow, which is going to be Friday the 13th. 13 is my lucky number. And I'll be sending out the link in the newsletter tomorrow. So you got to sign up today to get that. And if you're signing up today, you're going to get the initial email series about an hour after you sign up. So you'll get them right away. But that's how you'll get the slides by tomorrow. And if you absolutely have to have them right away, just email me and I'll get them to you.
After Mark puts that legend on there, right?
Yes.
For that one slide.
Yes.
Like, what are
You
we
bet.
talking about here? Like, oh, I must have deleted something. Thank you for that, Steve. And we'll make sure that we put a link to that into the podcast episode description for those of you that are listening on your mobile device of choice. As well, if you're a visual person, if you head over to podcasteditoracademy.com, if you don't want to type in the /newsletter, obviously the Academy is closed for new members. We've been closed for a few months for new members, and we'll be closed for a few more months for new members. Sorry, potential members. But there is a button to join the wait list, and that will take you over to that newsletter sign up as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just want to point out that Heidi made a good point that she said, I've built into every contract that there will be a 12-month rate review, and most of my shows are coming up to that. So, yeah, that's also an important thing, because if your client expects it coming, then it's much easier to have that conversation.
Yep. I did that myself a couple years ago. It's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
It's actually in the RFP, the quote, saying your rate will go up 5% after 12 months. And then I review it. And if it needs to go up higher, then I'd let them know after that 12-month period that it would need to go higher the next time.
Yeah, and I need to remember to put that in my contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's a little different. Mine says I'll give them, no less than 30 days notice. And then I do. It may be at 12 months. It may not. But usually I'll point to things that have changed. Like, for example, if they constantly ask for extra scope that wasn't included, which, I'm obliged to help out with. But then when it comes to the point like, hey, I'm going to have to raise my rates because I want to continue to deliver what you've been routinely asking for, but it's going to cause an increase in rates. So that does couple things for me. Either it gives me more money or it cuts out the extra work that was bothering me enough to generate that in the first place.
Yep.
Yep. Good.
Mark, I think that was our last slide, was it not?
It was.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching this reveal of the 2024 Podcast Editor Industry Survey. We're going to have the slides available to you. Join the newsletter. If you need the one with the legend on it, because I have the one without the legend right now. If you sign up, you'll get that. But Mark will get me the new one. It's just a
Yep.
detail. We've explained it very well. The replay will be available as well, so don't worry about that. Plus, this is going to be episode 102 of the Podcast Editor Mastermind Show, so we'll be putting this out in audio version within a few days. Alejandro's watching right now, and he knows exactly where to go to edit us properly. And then a couple other things that we want to let you know about that are coming up. We have on Wednesday, December 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern, the Holiday Hangout, Podcast Editor Holiday Hangout. We do this every year, just hanging out. I'll be putting that information also in the newsletter, so that's why you want to be on our newsletter. And then we got to talk about Podfest in Orlando, because Podfest is coming up. There's lots going on for people at Podfest this year. In fact, here's a wonderful old picture. Whoops, hey, got to take this out. Let me do it again. Why can't I get this to work? Mark, why does this always happen to me? Anyway,
That's because you're
I think
doing it
it's the
live,
background.
Steve.
that's right.
Yeah, I see Brittany Felix.
You had that
so-
as a background.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to be hanging out together in Orlando for Podfest. There's all kind. They actually have an editor pass, meaning they're focusing on us a lot, and they actually put together enough sessions that they have an editor track all these post-production sessions, and a few people that we know here, Mark, a couple from the Academy, they're going to be presenting post-production stuff, and Mark and I are going to be talking about some of the survey stuff in a different way. So yeah, go to Podfest. Well, I should have put a link in the chat, but Podfest is where you want to be. It's January 16th through 19th in Orlando, Florida. If you want more details, go to here. Let me see. It's going to be. I got to make one real quick. Podfest? I think it's just Podfest. I'll have to check the link. It'll be in the newsletter. Go to the newsletter. All the information is going to be there. Plus, we have a whole page full of resources for that, so you'll be able to attend and staff the Ask an Editor booth, which is an excellent way to get to meet podcasters, show them your value, answer questions. They're going to see your value, and who knows, you might make a connection there, and you might be able to work together. And that's our goal with all of the stuff that we're doing here with the people at Podfest. So we hope you all are going to be there. Plus, the Hall of Fame ceremonies will be there. Tom Webster's one of them. Chris Kramitzel is going to be inducted. Jessica Kufferman, rightfully so, is being inducted to the Hall of Fame. That's a separate ceremony, but it's going to be during Podfest at the same hotel. If you want those details, again, I'll be communicating those in the newsletter. So get on our newsletter. If you're not on there yet, please do so now.
Yeah, so sign up for the newsletter, guys. Come on. Yeah.
Yep. A lot going on in the next month, and sign up for the newsletter so you don't get left behind.
Yep. Mark, thank you for putting together a great presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mark. That was
Always fun as
awesome.
always. And thank you, Steve. Thank you, Carrie. And thank you for everyone in the chat that has asked me some challenging questions to help us understand what's happening with all these rates and services and everything. Hopefully we've all gotten a little smarter from it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Carrie,
And-
thank you for being here with us on this ride.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for listening to me, and especially Dave Jackson for letting me poke the bear.
Hey, Patrick.
And Pat, it's so nice seeing everybody, and Alejandro, as always. I'm sorry about the editing part.
All right. Well, folks, we'll be coming back we'll be coming back with the Mastermind Show in January, because obviously we're in the middle of the holidays here in America. But we'll be trying to communicate everything that's going on in the near future through that newsletter. Sign up at podcasteditacademy.com/newsletter.
Thank
Everybody
you.
say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you so much.